you like that? Excellent. All right, I'm going to introduce you to our next person here. This is a relationship that I've known for about 30 years. 30 years of my life. There's someone in this room I've known for 30 years. Longer than I've known my wife, I've known this person. So pretty amazing. Mr. Nick Mangeris is someone that has about 4 decades plus of experience in network marketing. He was the founder of a very large network marketing company that started right here in Longmont, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, occupied space in this exact building. He was voted the #1 employer in the state of Colorado. He was Businessman of the Year. He was on the Inc. 200 list for most successful companies in this nation. That's a pretty big deal. He's got some pretty big accomplishments. And here he is. I would not say in the middle of his career. I would say he is on the back end of his career. But now you've got to ask yourself, what's he doing here? What's he doing at Longevity? And I think that's a really powerful question. First of all, I've learned a lot from this man. He's taught me a lot. I've learned a lot about people. I've learned a lot about relationships. I've learned a lot about network marketing. I've learned a lot about business. I've learned a lot about communicating. And that is a lot of thanks to him. So we were actually business partners at one time. We started a network marketing company together back in the late 90s. And so that was a wonderful experience, an incredible journey. And we accomplished some really powerful things during that time. And so it's interesting how life works. And here we are many years later, and we've been friends, we've been close this whole time. And over the last several years, we've been talking. And I actually reached out to Nick and invited him to be a part of what we were doing in any capacity here. It didn't even matter to me. Just having his presence here, his insight, his wisdom, it would make a big impact on Longevity. And so probably about 6 months ago, we started talking real seriously. And he just said, you know what, I've been so impressed with Dr. Wallach. I've been so impressed with Steve Wallach, the Wallach family, and where this company is going. I'd love to add some value. And I said, we'd love to have you. It would be such a benefit. So, you know, Nick is someone that could easily take a corporate role at Longevity. He could easily add tremendous perspective from a product standpoint. He's very knowledgeable about nutrition and products. He has provided some of this nation's and this industry's greatest supplements to the marketplace. He's formulated, he's manufactured, he's traveled all over the world giving lectures on health and nutrition. He says, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be a corporate person. I don't want a salary. I don't want to go do what that looks like. He says, I'd like to come along your side and step into the field and simply be someone that can look into the eyes of other people and give belly to people and tell my story and inspire people and give people some hope and some encouragement about why network marketing makes so much sense. So I asked him if he would mind if we invited him up to the front of the room so I could ask him some questions so you could hear some of his answers and just hear his perspective as someone in his mid-70s who's been around this block a number of times. Would you like to hear from a gentleman that has done the things that Thank you so much for being here today. This is fantastic. What an incredible treat. So we're having a lot of fun. Nick lives right here in Berthoud. But if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about your story. I'm just going to sit down. Talk a little bit about your story and just what this industry has taught you. Just come from the heart, come from the cup. He has not, I didn't want him to have a chance to prepare. I wanted you to see the shoot from the hip, off the cuff, Nick Mangeris, the man that I know. He's got so much stuff that he could pour into, but I just want you to hear a little bit about his story and some of the lessons that he's learned about network marketing and why he believes this industry is so powerful for people, and then ultimately kind of what led you here to Longevity. Is that okay for you to talk about?
You bet.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Nick.
I'm going to ask one thing. Scott's known me a long time, and so has Juliet. If I run on too long, just go.
You got it.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. I genuinely do. It's wonderful to be here. I'm going to tell you something that's different, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I look out in this audience, and it's an audience I'm not that familiar with. Unbeknownst to a lot of you, I'm the oldest person in this room by a number of years. This year, very soon, I'm going to be 75. And I appreciate that.
You look great.
You don't look it.
She went. I always like to hear that, and I'm proud to say it. I know I have some good genes. My dad's from Greece, my mom's from Sweden. And so, you know, I got blue eyes and dark hair, and my skin's okay, and so on and so forth. That's kind of what I got started with. When the sperm met the egg, that's what I got. I didn't have any choice. That wasn't something that I could look at and I could say, you know what, I'm going to pick this and I'm going to pick that. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. I'm big on stories, and in particular in network marketing. People want to know your story. They want to know why you're doing what you're doing. That's going to make a world of difference when you're talking to people. Before anything happens, they're going to buy you. They're not going to buy the products. They're not going to buy Steve. They're not going to buy this genius who sits up here, and I say that with the most respect. He's one of the people on this earth that I actually will follow, and that's Scott Fardulas. I'm very, very selective, and he's one of the people I will follow. But they don't know him, and I'm talking to you, I'm talking to one of you on an individual basis. You're talking to somebody, however you have your way of introducing, however you have your way of sharing it. Somebody said earlier, I think it was Juliet, that says, you know what, we really are selling. And we are selling. And the best part of selling is everybody's buying. Every day we're buying. We're buying something from our spouse, from our children, from the school teacher, from somebody else. Every day, everyone is buying. So here's what happened. I was a senior executive with Kaiser Aluminum. I do not have a college degree. I'm a kid that grew up in the projects in Canton, Ohio, and had a great mom and a great dad. I had all of the love in a family relationship that you could ever ask for, and that was my foundation. I couldn't have had a better foundation. Couldn't have had a better mom and dad. So in the mid-70s, because I was born in 1943. That's a long time ago. I tell my grandkids I was born in the first half of the last century, which is true. So I got a pretty good job. For a kid that grew up in the projects, I got a pretty good job. I'm a senior executive with Kaiser Aluminum in their thin roll form division in mobile homes and RVs in Elkhart, Indiana. I moved out to Elkhart, Indiana. There's a whole story before on how I got to Elkhart, but I get out to Elkhart, Indiana. I got a good job. I'm making real good money. I have a very nice home. Have property outside of Elkhart. Family's doing great. I've got 4 children. I have a wonderful wife, and life is really good. I go to church one Sunday. There's a new couple in church, and I walk up and I say, hi, my name is Nick Mangeris, and I introduce myself and talk to them, and then I invited them over to our house for dinner. And about a week later, I think they came over to the house, and I talked to them, and then he told me what he did. And he said, you know, he says, I really want you to just go out to lunch with me, and I want to tell you what I do in real detail. And I think it's something that might change your life. I may not have the exact words right, but he said a few things that got my attention. And so in listening to him, we ended up going to lunch. Went to a Mexican food restaurant. At the Mexican food restaurant, I have a high acid system, and so I can't eat a lot of hot foods. And I love Mexican food, and I love Indian food, and I love Thai food. And it doesn't love me. And very sadly, beside that, I have Crohn's. And so it's really bad. And so his name is Bill, and Bill says, well, Nick, I'll order for you. And he orders in Spanish, and I know what caliente is. I also know what muy caliente is. And so I said, hey, Bill, I said, I can't eat that stuff. Well, I always carry Rolaids or Maalox, Mylanta, Tums in my pocket, always. So I eat the food, and gosh, it is just so good. I'm really thoroughly enjoying it. And at the end, I'm reaching in my pocket, and about the same time, he brings out this tall white bottle that looks like Drano. And he sets it on the table, and the label is facing him, not me. He says, I'm gonna pour this out and I want you to drink it. Don't take that stuff. He says, you ever read what's on the label? And I mean, he's looking right at me, Steve, and he's saying, you ever read what's on the label? And I said, well, I don't know, but my stomach feels better, you know, and I don't have any after effects. And so he pours this stuff out, and it goes glug, glug, glug out there, and it's this brown stuff. And I said, Bill, I says, what is that stuff? He says, just drink it, I promise you. He says, it'll take care of your stomach. If it doesn't, he says, then you can take your whatever you're going to take afterwards. So I take this, drink this stuff, and gee whiz, it feels good. Tastes terrible. I mean, it really did. But I drank it, and my stomach didn't bother me. I didn't have any cramping. I didn't have any upset stomach. I didn't have any flatulence. I didn't have any of that. It was fine. Okay, well, yeah, that's really pretty cool. And so then he turns the bottle around. It was aloe vera. And this was my introduction to my future in network marketing. I won't go into the name of the company, but today, arguably, they're one of the top 2 or 3 network marketing companies in the world. And he told me, he says, Nick, he says, this is what I do for business. I said, you mean you take people to lunch and you give them aloe vera as a surprise? No. And I said, okay. But, you know, tell me what you really do. And he says, well, he says, I have a home business. He says, it permits me to do anything I want with my family at my own time. It permits me to do things, all of the things that we heard. And Juliet, it was amazing what you did. I have never seen that. I've been in this business for 40 years. I have never seen what you did.
Thank you.
I loved it. And that's another reason I love coming to these presentations. So he tells me, you know, a few more things. And I said, well, you know, I'll buy a bottle, because I knew that's where it was going. You know, you got to buy a bottle. And so I bought a bottle, and then he contacted me in a couple of days. He says, hey, what do you think? And I says, yeah, this stuff really works. I says, you know, I can eat my oldest daughter's cooking now as she's learning to cook. And I says, you know, so yeah, life is really good. This is kind of cool. And I'm going on about my life. Next Sunday, I see him at church. And I don't talk business generally on Sundays. It's just my own personal rule. It doesn't affect anybody else. I just try and refrain. And so he says, hey, I'd like to get in touch with you again. I want to explain a couple other things. And I says, okay. We went back to the same Mexican restaurant. And I got to tell you, each time I'm making him buy because of what he did. So we go back to this Mexican restaurant. And he tells me more about a home-based business. And I said, well, I like that. And the reason I liked it, because in sales with Kaiser Aluminum, I had 5 or 6 different sales managers that worked underneath me that had regions, and they sold to everybody from Skyline to Schultz Homes to all of the mobile home RV manufacturers. And we also sold thin gauge, fascia, soffit, downspout, guttering, all of that kind of stuff. So I was active and involved with people on a regular daily basis. And so Bill tells me, he says, you know, I think you really do real well in this business. And so I'm saying, hey, Bill, you know, do you want to get me involved? And by that time, I kind of knew exactly where things were going. Before I had a suspicion. But the point is, in the very beginning, he didn't jump all over me and say, you've got to get into this business. You're going to make a ton of money. Oh, you're just the guy that's going to really do very, very well in this business. And I think each of us at different times have met somebody that we feel would be that individual. And in fact, that's the prejudgment Scott talks about that we should never, ever do. We don't know who's going to really succeed in this business. We may have an idea, we may say a little, may see a little something when we talk to them. So at any rate, I end up joining this company and I got started. I was making very good money with Kaiser Aluminum. I had a car, I had 2 Cessna Citations at my disposal. I don't fly, I fly in the plane. I don't take the controls. Scott does, and Tom, and some of these people who are able to do that. I fly in the plane, but I had these planes at my disposal, and I could go to various places all around the Midwest, which was my region as a vice president. So we're, starting to tell people, I'm telling my wife, she likes it. They had what they called a non-surgical facelift kit that had aloe vera in it. And so she's really talking to other people. Now, the reason I'm going into this detail is that I've always been all about the product. 100% of the time. I've sold insurance, I've sold cars, I've sold Kirby and Electrolux, and I've sold a variety of different things in my life. So I'm not afraid to talk to people. And I usually knew my product really well. So what happens is I'm telling a few people, they had another product called an aloe vera jelly, which was kind of a sticky, gooey stuff. And it was in a little tube and you'd squeeze that out. Well, I had athlete's foot. And so I put that on it and it worked. So if you follow what I'm saying, by osmosis, everything focused in my life to the product. I didn't even think about the money because I was making really good money. It had nothing to do with why I joined the company. It was all about the product. During my whole life, I really try and take good care of my health. Honestly, I want to live, and I can see myself living to be 100 years old. And after seeing some people that are in their late 80s and late 90s, I went to a church meeting here in Longmont last night over on Bross, and there's the lady that conducted it is 90 years old. And I'm going to tell you what, she is as spry as anybody that's standing in this room, and I don't care what your age is. That gives me hope. And so I associate with people who have longevity in their life. Just relate that to longevity. I want to be as young as I can at whatever age I am. Doesn't make any difference. So about a year, 11, 12 months into my association with this company, the check that I'm getting equals my check that I'm getting every month from Kaiser Aluminum, every month. And I'm thinking, well, this isn't bad. So I sit down and I have a real heart-to-heart with my wife, and I say, can you imagine what I can do if I leave Kaiser Aluminum? Anybody in here know what an 8.0 earthquake is? The house shook. She was into stability, financial stability. That check's coming in every month. These people are never going to fire you. They love you, Nick. Your region is the best. It's the biggest. You got the airplane. You got the car. You got all of this kind of stuff. My parents thought I had lost it and it was over. Something that I was on behind everybody. I was taking something. Why would you quit? You know, Kaiser, my dad's old blue collar guy, went through World War II, worked in mechanics and a variety of other things for years and years. At any rate, my wife and I are running our family. My parents are, no disrespect to my parents, but my parents, or my wife and I run our family, and we make the decisions, and we make them collectively. We decided with a little urging from Nick that I'm leaving Kaiser. And I left Kaiser. I got on one of the citations. I flew out to Oakland, California, walked into the CEO's office, who's over all of Kaiser, Kaiser Permanente, Kaiser Cement, Kaiser Asphalt, Kaiser Aluminum, all of it. And I turned in a written resignation and gave him 30 days. I got a very, very nice card, handwritten by the then CEO that said, if you're ever looking for a job, you call me. I walked out, shook hands, shaking, literally. I was scared because from that minute on, my future was in my control. And before that, I didn't realize it, but I was so intent on doing what I could for Kaiser that I relied on them for everything. I relied on them for vacation. I relied on them for a car. I relied on them for the house that I lived in. I relied on them for where my children were going to go to school. I relied on them for when I was going to take a vacation. I relied on them to tell me how much they could afford to pay me. It was their decision my whole life. From now on, every one of those things was up to me. But I took a big leap. And I'm not, my comment to everyone here is don't take that leap. It's a scary leap. Wait until you get to the point, if you get to that point. I tell people that I talk to on a regular basis, if you really want to get involved with longevity, super. Do it part-time in the beginning. Take it a little bit at a time. Make sure you understand, and this is what it's this is what you want. It's going to be right for you personally. Everyone in here's got different personalities, and seeing all of these young students and I say young children, I have children that are older than almost everybody in this room. That's it, and it's wonderful to see. So I stayed with this company for quite some time. After a couple of years, they asked me to go into the home office, and I had made a lot of money from the financial side. But in addition to that, I improved and I grew personally tremendously because everything from that point forward depended upon me. And I listened to this young man here and the acceptance of responsibility. I almost said burden, and that's not a burden because I could see it in his eyes. He accepts this responsibility. I grew to accept the responsibility of what I was doing and taking on all the responsibility for my family and not having as the bridge or the crutch to say, Kaiser didn't give us a big enough raise this year, and so we're not going to be able to take the trip and go down to Kings Island. We're not going to go to Disney World or, my wife. You and I are not going to be able to go to the Turks and Caicos this year. We're not going to be able to do that. That was because somebody else made those decisions. Since I've been in network marketing on a full-time basis, which actually began in 1979 on a full-time basis. Since that time, I've never looked back, not at all. I spent a number of years in the field, a number of years in the home office of this company. That company's sales exceeded over 500 million while I was there. Was not due entirely to Nick Mangeris, and it was wonderful what Scott said about all these things that I've achieved, but there's always somebody else. There's a team that wins a championship. We can all look at Peyton Manning. He may throw the pass, and somebody out there, has to catch it. But if he doesn't have those guys on the front line blocking for him, he has no time to throw that pass. Is that right? Yes. Say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't. He can't do it. And he is a star by himself. He may be player of the game. He may be player of the year, but he can't win the championship alone. I learned that as I grew, going through different network marketing companies and then owning my own. So I left this company in the late 80s, ended up, unfortunately, going through a divorce. My former wife is still a very good friend. She lives in Berthoud also. And my children had all moved up here and so on and so forth. So there's a reasonable process that took place there. But what occurred was I went into some consulting because I had gone into management and I had gotten at the management level. So I'm into managing and into giving orders and setting schedules and doing those kinds of things. In 1992, started a network marketing company in this building, like Scott said. It was exactly in this building. And we started selling a product. I'm not going to go into all of the products. Doesn't really make any differences. And by the way, you can look it up on the internet. It's all on the internet. And we did exceedingly well. We ended up moving our office to 3rd and Lashley here. And there's what was called the Valley Bank. And I owned all of the Valley Bank area in there and so on. Well, the company owned it, that kind of stuff. So we did exceedingly well. We had a number of employees. In 1996, I became Entrepreneur of the Year for Rocky Mountain State. Was on the cover of Success Magazine. I mean, I had all of that stuff. In 1997, I realized I had gotten out of control of my life. Being an owner of a company, and believe me, I sincerely respect Brisky and Thies and Steve and Joe Wally. I genuinely do. They're where they need to be. I don't want to be there, not any longer. I've been there, done that, you know, bought the T-shirt, soaked the T-shirt, wore it. I don't want to do that again. I'm doing what I want to do now. I made that choice, which is very late in life for what we're talking about. And what Scott says is 100% true. I'm, in effect, I'm the past. This is the future of the company. It's the future of America. It's the future of where this country's going. It's the future of who we will be in the world, globally. Who's sitting in here? So we're doing, you know, quite well. I ended up leaving the company. That's a whole different story. And a couple of years later, Scott and I and my son got together and we formed a network marketing company, and it was headquartered over in Loveland, Colorado. And it started to grow, and there were promises made by investors, and there were things that were supposed to get done. They didn't get done. The one thing I will tell you is that during the course of my experience in starting that company on a shoestring, one of the people that made the company possible was Scott. My son did his part, I did my part, but we could not have put the company together without Scott. His influence, the people that he talked to, the openness about Scott and the way he lived his life is an example that I'm proud to say I would follow. At that time, we had somebody who was a major part of our company. His name was Dennis Weaver, the actor. Anybody know him? Mm-hmm. Raise your hand if you know him. Okay, yeah. Gunsmoke and McCloud, and he did the movie Duel, and you know there were several of them. I can't remember all of them. But Scott knew him. This is the range of influence that Scott wields when he stands up here. And so he introduces me to Dennis Weaver, who became a significant part of the company. Scott and I and Dennis Weaver traveled. We went out to the Midwest and we went various places. We did presentations and just absolutely did the very, very best that we could. Unfortunately, there were some background financial problems that we couldn't overcome. And so the company ended up getting sold. And Scott went on to do some other things. My son went on, and I went on, and I went back into some consulting, and I did some other things. Anyhow, ended up getting back in and out of working with other companies and doing consulting, and didn't really like it because I'm dealing with most corporate owners, entrepreneurs who know everything, and you can't tell them anything. You can't put it down on paper and explain it. You can't put one and a plus sign and a 1 and an equal sign and say 2, and they say, but how do you mean that? Yeah, exactly. And these, in many cases, are very, very well-educated people, but they have their own dreams, they have their own ideas and so on, and they bring somebody in who is a consultant, and most entrepreneurs don't listen to consultants. They hear what you say, but they don't listen to what you say. And so some of the companies I consulted for succeeded, did very, very well, and some failed miserably. Personally, I've started other companies and I've had great successes and I've had heart-wrenching failures. So I'm in the process of another company in Berthoud, Colorado, network marketing company that we just were struggling to get going. I finally decided, you know what, I'm not going through this anymore. Scott and I had been talking, as he indicated, for about 6 months. I knew Dr. Joe Wallach, not personally, but I knew him as a result of television programs back in the 60s. And I watched him on television. And then I had met Steve a few years back, and I didn't know Dave, but I watched some of the things I saw on their programs that they have. I went through the whole university. I want you all to understand something. I went through the university just exactly as Scott Fardoulis and Juliet are asking you to do. Otherwise, I'm putting myself above. And let me tell you, I have an ego. Every reasonable entrepreneur better have an ego, because you're going to get hit with all kind of stuff. And there's times you have to stand your ground. And so taking other people's money to start a company, I'm responsible for that money. I'm responsible for people that I employ. There's a great deal of responsibility. I'm through with it. I tell people, I'm saying I'm too old. You know, I've done this before. You know, I'm not doing it again. What I love is what I'm doing now. I have the opportunity to share, unarguably, the highest quality products that are available anywhere. I don't care if you go to Sprouts. I don't care if you go to Whole Foods, if you go to Vitamin Cottage. It doesn't make any difference. I don't care what network marketing company you go to. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I know this is being recorded, and I'm going to hear about it. But I know over 75% of the manufacturers of nutritional supplements in the United States. I know who they are. I know what's in the products. I know what's on the label. I will promise you, I have never put out a product, nor would I represent a product that what was on the label was not in the bottle. I promise. You can take that, you know, if you end up coming to my funeral, you can say, I remember Nick saying this. Maybe they're going to put it on my headstone. But that was something that was vital to me. Because if I'm talking to you about these products and this company, I personally, I make it a point to know what is behind it. And that's why I could join Youngevity. I had an opportunity to join a number of other companies. And I'm not going to say who. My son is a senior executive of a very, very successful network marketing company today. I didn't join his company. Nothing against my son. Scott knows him, loves him. They're good friends. So does Juliet. But I didn't join that company. And there are some other companies that are out there. Now, there's some companies that have good products, and my son's company has good products. I didn't particularly care for the entire full course meal at these other companies. It was either ownership, it was what's in the products, it's the source, it's the manufacturer, it's the compensation program. When you really truly take a couple minutes to understand the compensation program that you got with Youngevity, grab your socks, kids. I'm not kidding you. You know, we hear somebody made this kind of money and somebody made that kind of money. You have volumes of people making money in Youngevity. That's rare. In addition to that, knowing what I have discovered over a number of years in period about how the introductions are made and how Dave Brisky and how Steve Wallach make decisions about who they will permit to become, and that's a key word, who they will permit to become part of the Youngevity family, made a big difference. It was a huge influence in my life, because I can promise you what we see is just a fraction. It's the tip of the iceberg of the number of companies that approach them. Because, why? They're a public company, they're very well led. The other companies that are maybe struggling and end up trying to become part of the longevity family, they may have way too much baggage. They may have way too many problems. Their product may not be exactly as it says on the label. The products that you have, and I'm huge on products, but the products that you have in longevity, I put in my body. My wife puts in her body. All except one son. I've got 8 children, 25 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. I am the absolute perfection of network marketing. Right? I mean, do the math on that one, And my son happened to have started his own organization, and he's in management with another company. But my children use the products. My grandchildren, I've got great-grandchildren that now, I haven't sent them yet, but they're going to take the products. It made a world of difference to me, and I try and be an example to them, both spiritually, economically, in my relationships. I do the very best that I can. Oftentimes I fail miserably, but I do the very best that I can. The one thing that I can do is stand before somebody and I can say, yep, my next birthday here in a few months, I'm going to be 75. And I feel good. And I feel good up here. My body, my mental attitude is being fed, it's being satisfied. That's because of the products. Now, don't kid yourself. Even at my age, there's still things that I want to do. I want to do some things for some children. My wife and I started the Handicap Riders Association in the state of Colorado, and we're big in the Arabian horse industry for years and years. We had the #1 and #2 Arabian horse stallion in the world. And we had, at one time, 64 horses. And one thing Dennis Weaver taught me, Dennis Weaver made the comment. He comes up and he's this big, tall, rangy guy, good-looking guy, almost as good-looking as Sam Elliott. So, see, and the women always smile when I say that. He comes up and he puts his arm around me and he kind of looks at me, and he had been up to my ranch, and he says, Nick, you never own anything that eats while you sleep. I said, where were you 64 horses ago? So that's a real Reader's Digest synopsis of my life to some degree. I married took me a couple times to find it, and took me a couple times to grow up, but I married the love of my life. Problems for me was never who I had gotten married to before. They're wonderful people. I have great relationships with them and have children with them and so on. But I absolutely love my life, and I couldn't be more proud to be in Scott and Juliet's organization. And I say that with all love and due respect, because I respect them. I said early on in the very beginning, there's very, very few people at my age that I'm going to follow in my life. And Scott Fardulis is certainly one of those, and Juliet. Take a look at their family. That's the example. Scott had said, he may want to ask some questions. I know I covered an awful lot, so if there's any questions that he has or anybody has, I build the business the same way as everybody else. I talk to people, and when she was, let's see, who was it? The fear on the call? Mm-hmm. Was it?
Concrete fear.
Which? Who was it? Somebody said the fear on the call.
Yeah, conquering fear.
Yes, conquering fear. It's still tough. But after the first or second call, it used to be after the 10th or 12th call. Now it's after the first or second call. I'm right back in the groove. But it used to be 10 calls, 20 calls, and I don't want to call them. I know what they're going to say. And I have talked myself out of calling somebody. And there's somebody in this room I'm going to identify. She doesn't know me very well, but she knows my wife. Brittany, would you stand up? Brittany has had a big influence on my wife. My wife's name is Joni, and she sings with Loveland Choral Society and knows Brittany reasonably well. And I saw Brittany, somebody had approached me for another company, and I saw Brittany on a tape for this other company. And I thought, wow, that's a surprise. I would have never had the courage to ask Brittany. Not at all. And look who's sitting in this room.
Mm-hmm.
I can't give you a better example. She is wonderful in what she does. She has an amazing spirit about her. And I've got that from my wife. I apologize. I can't give you firsthand information, but she is absolutely an amazing person. And as experienced as I think I am, I wouldn't have had the courage to go up and talk to Brittany about longevity. I would have had to go through 2 or 3 of you, so you would have been my failures to get to her. Thank you. But that's what the business is all about. I've got friendships in France, I have friendships in Australia, I have friendships in Hong Kong, I have friendships in Tokyo, I have in Canada, I have in Mexico. And there's only one reason, not because of me, but because of what this profession actually gave me the opportunity. I was benefited by that. My life is totally different. I can't imagine what I would have been if I would have stayed at Kaiser Aluminum, gotten up, put on the suit and put on the tie and went to the office. And I liked what I did because I did have an opportunity to go talk to people. I really did. And in that respect, you know, there's some parallels between what Steve said earlier about what he liked to do. You liked it. And I hope you draw. I hope you still do. And that you are involved or whatever. Oh, he's sitting here. So he wasn't paying attention. He was drawing. But, you know, don't let those things change. Don't stop. I'm and then I'm going to close, I promise, Scott. A hobby. Raise your hand if you have a hobby. Okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you don't have a hobby. Good, please. Thank you. Oh, was that a half hand?
I'm debating what a hobby looks like in my life.
Okay. I won't try and define it. As a young man, not graduating from high school and getting married far too young. No advice to anybody, that's not my job. But getting married far too young, I was really big into automobiles. I came from an era in the 50s when the muscle cars were just coming in. Corvette, 1953, and some of you don't, what is a Corvette? Oh, yeah. So at any rate, 1953, Corvette comes out with a 6-cylinder engine. You know, I won't go into all of the details. The mid-50s, 57 Chevrolet with a fuel-injected engine from the factory, lots of horsepower. First year, the General Motors produced an engine that had 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Never happened before from a factory-produced automobile. You could modify the engines and you could make a lot of horsepower. But from the factory, they came out with 1 horsepower per cubic inch. 60s or all of the muscle cars. I mean, you know, they wrote songs about them. My 409, the Beach Boys, you know, it's that. I mean, this was the era, boy. Fast cars, rock and roll, and I grew up in that. So I got very, very involved as a hobby with cars. I'm probably about 60% deaf. And that's because of what occurred while I was drag racing. I got semi-professional in drag racing. Anybody that wants to talk cars afterwards, I'll be here. But I got really involved in drag racing. Didn't have any effect. It didn't cause my divorces, I promise you. But enjoyed cars. And I didn't build the engines, I drove the cars because I was young and dumb. I wasn't afraid. And I'd get in the car and I'd drive the car. And so I graduated from what we could buy from your dealerships and modify the engines and change the rear end ratios and transmissions and so on. We did all of that ourselves. and I graduated to what's called a funny car. And I drove funny cars for years and years and years. And that is what happened here. So take care of your health. That's one thing. The other thing is you don't have to know everything. Understand that. I know a lot, but I know a lot because of the years. It's kind of like, you know, the old phrase, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. I've been doing it so long. 40 years is full time. I haven't gotten another job. This is what I've done. I raised my family. My children went to school, and they traveled the world, and ended up getting married, and grandchildren are now doing different things. But in this business, there's the tendency, in the business of home-based business and network marketing, there's the tendency to have to know everything. And when I ask a question, and then you show me by a raise of hands, can anybody in here tell me the lift and duration of a camshaft and the overlap ratio on a 1964 426 Hemi? Okay. But you may have heard of the engine. It's a powerful engine. You may hear about turbochargers on diesels today that make obscene power. You may hear about a variety of different things. When you go to the automobile dealer, new, used car doesn't make any difference. You don't go up to the salesman and ask the salesman, what's the rear end ratio and what's the first and second shift servo pressure and your 727 transmission. You don't have a clue. and these are the same people that will make a good new car salesman with a good automobile, with a good lot. That makes 75, 80, 100 grand a year. And they don't know that. They're going to sell you because you're there to buy. The people you're going to talk to don't know they're shopping, but they are buying. I promise you, they're buying. And one of the other things is that pushed me over the edge with longevity is I can have my own Amazon. And I learned the term from Scott, not mine. I didn't create it. So you can have your own Amazon. And I'm already talking to people and they say, well, you know, I already buy this or I already get that. I say, I'll tell you what, we'll get it shipped right to your house. You don't even have to leave the house if you don't want. You can spend time with your spouse, you can spend time with your children. You can do whatever you want to do. The choice is going to be yours, but we're not going to confine you to going to King Soopers or going to Sam's or going to Costco or going to Safeway. It's going to come right to your house. You're going to have this broad selection. And you can tell somebody else, and whatever they do, you're going to get a commission off of it. You don't have to handle the products. You don't have to do the meeting. You don't have to do any presentations. Now, I didn't have the advantage of the Longevity University. That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Between that and I'm fortunate enough to be on some calls with Scott and listen to what he's doing a couple days a week, two different days a week, and then saying, gee, I got to tell you, whatever you got to do, you got to get to the point where you hear those calls. They change your life. And they change the rest of what you do from this point forward. And you don't have to know what the air intake and carburation to air ratio or fuel to air ratio is on the car to make that car go fast. I never did when I drove. I just drove the car. So I want to thank you, and Scott, if there's anything else.